Okay, hi, I am Stephanie Haines with the Indiana Arts Commission, and today I'm talking with Rebecca Buchan from Luna Language Services. We're going to talk a little bit about ASL interpretation. We're going to talk about how you can schedule an ASL interpreter and why it can be beneficial to your arts event. So, hi Rebecca, can you introduce yourself and tell us about your company?
Yes, of course. Hi, my name is Rebecca Buchan, as Stephanie said, and I am the Director of American Sign Language Services and Education for a language company called Luna Language Services. And Luna, although we're located here in Indianapolis, we do provide ASL interpreting services all over the entire state of Indiana.
Great, great. So let's just get right to it. When someone needs to request an ASL interpreter for their event, can you give us an idea of how that first exchange might happen, or where they even go looking to find an interpreter in their area?
So I'll speak specifically to Luna and then maybe add some general information as well. So we try to make it as easy and as painless as we can for people. We are very well aware at Luna that language access is one very small piece of everybody else's pie out there in terms of resources and time allocated to set it up and all of that. So we try to make the process very, very easy. And it's an email or a phone call. And the email is just at request@luna360.com. So request@luna360.com. Or you can find us on the internet at luna360.com. And we will just ask whether it's a call or an email. You reach out to us, and then one of our coordinators will follow up with you in terms of the information that we need and what to expect with our services. So it's really easy to set up.
So just reaching out is the first step.
Yep.
And then your employees will ask all the questions, or what kind of information will people need to prepare when they're ready to schedule an interpreter?
That's a great question. And the answer to that is that it's going to depend kind of a little bit on the type of event that you're needing interpreters for. So if it's let's say it's a concert of some sort, or a poetry reading or something like that might be happening, and you want to provide general access for, the best preparation that our interpreters can have is a copy of a set list or the lyrics, or some, whatever you might have also to prepare your people for. It'll make the interpreter's lives so much easier if they have that available. Not that it's necessary. I mean, interpreters do go in quite often and just right there in the moment and interpret. But if we're talking about something that is an art performance, or something that the creator has already put a lot of prep time into, then we want to make sure that that's reflected in the interpretation as well. So we want to make sure that we can equip our interpreters with any type of information. Sometimes people don't have it, that's okay, but in order of a service, if you will, or an outline, maybe it's an artist's name that the interpreter can Google and do prep time that way. That's helpful.
Great. And when I schedule ASL interpreters, I usually set the start time, because you do need to provide a start time and an end time. I usually schedule it maybe 15 minutes before, but what's the best practice for that, as far as having interpreters arrive early or stay a little bit after?
Sure. So most agencies, even across the nation, operate with a 2-hour minimum for ASL interpreting. So understand that, for 2 hours at least, you can guarantee to have that interpreter there. If you think it's going to go over that, then you'll need to have an end time that reflects that. In terms of having the interpreters come early, that just needs to be requested in the initial contact and information exchange about the job itself. Sometimes interpreters need to be there for lighting purposes. Maybe there's another light that needs to be set up for the interpreter, or where they're going to be on stage, or if it's the reverse, if you have a deaf performer, then the interpreter might need to be there for a mic check, for example. And interpreters know to show up early, but it doesn't hurt to just say, please have the interpreter be there 15 minutes early or whatever.
Set your start time with some, extra. Yeah, that sounds great. Is there anything that people should know that are things we should avoid doing when we're scheduling or when we are hosting an ASL interpreter at our events?
Not avoid doing, but let me give you just a few hints maybe that might help prepare you and your organization for requesting an interpreter. I mentioned the 2-hour minimum. It also is standard operation for an event that goes over 2 hours to have 2 interpreters available. And that's related to the physical and cognitive strain on one interpreter. If you've ever seen 2 interpreters at an event, you've probably seen them switch back and forth. So expect that if it's over 2 hours. If this has been a recent phenomenon with the pandemic, if you have an interpreter who's going to be present virtually, and I guess on site as well, if you expect that interpreter to be live streamed or recorded, please let the interpreter know, or please let the agency know, so that they can make sure the interpreter is prepared for that, because it can be pretty daunting for an interpreter just be going along Facebook or social media and all of a sudden see themselves and their work being presented publicly like that. So out of professional courtesy, we just ask that that information be shared with the agency. And then other than that, interpreters are trained to be seen and not heard, and heard and not seen. So we do a pretty good job of staying, away from the central piece or the speaker or performer or whatever as much as we can. And we know that people might initially have a fear that the interpreter present is going to somehow detract from the event or from the purpose of the event. And while that's always possible, we know from experience that it might be a novel idea in the beginning, but people either usually look at the interpreter and then it becomes just part of the background for them, and they continue to focus on the speaker or the performer or whatever's happening. Or even more exciting than that is that people become more fascinated with American Sign Language, and it starts to kind of, they start to think more about it and become more aware of it. And that's all part of this larger diversity picture that, that our communities are striving for right now, is to just make these differences in ability and language and all these other things just present and acknowledged and respected by our community. So it serves a couple different purposes, though you might not initially think that in the beginning.
Yeah, that's great. What a good point, that there's artistry on the stage with whatever's going on, but the ASL Sign Language, American Sign Language, is also a visual artistry of its own that is beautiful. So I agree. It enhances the event.
Exactly.
In what other ways do you think having an ASL interpreter is beneficial to the audience in general?
Sure. I mean, in general terms, we know that people take in and retain and learn information through different senses and different media. And many times, again, I mentioned it's more of a byproduct than the actual goal, but many times people will resonate with a visual interpretation of what's happening and take in that information that way. So that's always a benefit. I mentioned the diversity inclusion part of it. There's an educational piece to it in terms of knowing the general community, knowing that deaf people are there and present and interested in the same things that they're interested in. And so it builds bridges a lot of times. And it really is just an opportunity to broaden the scope of outreach, of really anything, but in particular with arts.
Fantastic. One last thing I haven't asked yet. Do you have a price range you can tell us for an ASL interpreter?
Sure. So Luna currently works with the state of Indiana. We work under contract with them, and we therefore have a special pricing available for the state of Indiana. So if your organization wants to add that to the request to say that they are affiliated with the state or heard about Luna through the state of Indiana, we will make sure to give the same pricing. And there are a few variables which would be pieced out in the request process, but you can count on approximately $55 an hour with a 2-hour minimum per interpreter.
Okay, great. Well, that is good to know. And I thank you, Rebecca, for sharing your expertise with us today. And I'll say that I have had great experiences scheduling ASL interpreters through Luna Language for our events. And I think that I very much agree that scheduling an ASL interpreter, although it's required in many cases, is actually just really beneficial for the whole event. It's beautiful, it's wonderful, and it bridges those community gaps that you were talking about. So thank you so much, Rebecca. Thanks for being with us today.